Battleground New York City, the fight for your vote. Your front row seat to the battle for New York's next mayor. It's the old guard clinging to power, chasing a candidate they never saw coming. Every night, our experts break it down.
What New Yorkers want above all else is authenticity.
He's been more visible in the Hamptons this summer than he has been on the streets of New York City.
We're listening to the people who matter most, you, the voters.
He is the shining star. He's working very hard. And I think he would work hard for the city, too.
And when the candidates sit across from us, nothing's off the table. What's your plan to make New York City feel like a safer city?
S.E. Cupp, that's your perception. Of course, there's a lot of crime.
So what's happening right now? Let's dive in. Welcome to Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, where it's Monday, August 25th, and we have just 71 days until the all-important New York City mayoral race. It's the hottest game in town, and it's all anyone is talking about. And we've got it all covered right here. I'm S.E. Cupp. Let's get right into it. Later in today's show, we'll talk with independent candidate Jim Walden about his run for mayor of New York City. But first, as always, let's get to the latest news from the campaign trail. Joining me now is Lisa Evers, a reporter for Fox 5 New York. Lisa, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me.
Sure. So let's start with Andrew Cuomo, independent candidate, former governor. He got a big financial boost this past week. According to the Post, the pro-Cuomo super PAC Fix the City raised a whopping $1.26 million in the past week, making it the largest weekly haul for any mayoral candidate since the primary. How badly did Andrew Cuomo need this money, Lisa?
Well, he definitely and desperately needed this money because he's still trailing in just about every poll that is out there by double digits behind Zohran Mamdani, who, by the way, got about $1 million mostly from out of state around that same time period. But what's interesting about the Cuomo donations from the super PAC is, of course, as you all know, the super PACs are not limited. Individual contributions are not limited the way that they are when somebody is making them right from, to the actual candidate. So they can put in a lot more money. Some of them as much, one of the member of the Lauder family of the Estee Lauder makeup fortune contributing $500,000. That's just like one donation. So Andrew Cuomo needed it. But what was interesting to me were some of the names: Hess Corporation, the Oil Corporation. These are big families, very influential families. Just that goes beyond the amount of money and wealth that they have. And one of the rumors that's been circulating in the city, and you're very right, this is all anybody is talking about right now at this point in the summer, which is kind of unusual, and it just shows you how much it matters. But one of the things is who is giving the money and where and that's the thing. And the rumor was that there were big power players in New York, like the Hess family, like the Lauder family, that are very nervous about Zohran Mamdani becoming mayor of New York City, and it will do everything they can to get Cuomo, their guy, into office. And he needs the money because Mamdani is captivating a lot of attention. He's getting a lot of money from outside of New York State and from all of these other, the way that he's raising money. And Cuomo really needs it because it's just people feel in a lot of ways like we know what he is and he's not what we need. It's just that mood of change that seems to be taking over.
Yeah, there's nearly a dozen super PACs funneling money into this race. But as I'm watching it take shape, I'm wondering how significant the money is in this race, or is it really being won on the ground and on social media and in kind of old school campaigning? It just doesn't feel like the money in this case is the thing that's going to be determinative. But what are you seeing on the ground?
I think everything that you're talking about. I mean, Mamdani, the ground game is there along with the digital game. But I think for Andrew Cuomo, it's really the commercials. I mean, remember the mayor's race Bill de Blasio was trailing behind very, very badly at one point when he
I
was running for
remember.
mayor. And it was this highly produced commercial of him with his biracial son that really changed his image, that just galvanized the city. And the timing of it coming at a moment where everybody was looking very closely at race relations, at the rights
Yeah.
of people of color in New York City, was very important. And a lot of political experts say that's what put him over the top. So the money is not mattering as much now, but I think it will as we get down to the wire. Which, and again, a lot of the political pundits are saying, oh well, nothing matters until after Labor Day. But I think that your core, getting that base, that core that is there. This is not just about getting an individual to vote. This is about getting people who are in various networks, whether it's a LinkedIn network, whether it's an Instagram network, whether it's any particular special interest group, in order to show up at the polls and convince their networks to vote for the candidate. That's very important. But the money could make
Yeah.
a difference towards the end if it pays for very effective commercials.
It's so funny that you just brought up Labor Day because, as you know, the polls have Zohran Mamdani well ahead of Cuomo. But here's what former New York City Council Republican leader Joe Borelli told Fox News Digital. He said this race is not even close to over. And he's pointing to the first set of polls that will come out after Labor Day to really get a picture of where this race is. But that's a week away, Lisa. What's supposed to happen that's going to shake up this race significantly in the next week?
Well, I think there's a lot that can happen because the main issues that that we've discussed on Battleground, and that
Yes.
I've talked with many people about as well, are these issues. The public safety issue is huge. You have one of the contenders, Curtis Leo, making accusations that it's back to the bad old days where crimes were being declassified, where certain things are not being reported, so that the numbers and the metrics look really, really good for the NYPD. There's still the subway problem, but let's be real. Everything, unlike I don't think there's ever been a mayoral race where the scene, the actual setting and the issues could change very quickly because now we have the federal government, the president talking about, well, we bring the National Guard into New York City. Well, there goes your crime issue. If you have armed National Guard soldiers patrolling the subway, that's going to make people feel a different kind of way and maybe lessen the stress of that. So New York City is famous for having things change on a dime, and that
That's
could
true.
change. And then we also have the lingering, the corruption scandal. Today, Zohran Mamdani had a public safety gathering with people who are trying to get more safety for bike riders, for pedestrians, that type of thing. But he took a big jab at Adams and just said, hey, this is, the culture of corruption is turning people off. We have to keep people involved. So things can change very, very fast, especially when you have
That's true.
candidates that are this committed to it.
This mayoral race is also impacting other races. I'm sure you're aware of that. Nicole Maliotakis, New York City's lone House Republican, she might get a challenger in New York City Council member Justin Brannan. And to ward him off, she's going on the offensive. And the best way to do that, of course, tie him to Zohran Mamdani. She's letting everyone know that Justin Brannan is a Mamdani supporter. Is that going to be the go-to insult? And in fact, could that have the opposite effect? Could that make him more popular by tying him to Mamdani?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the constituency. It depends on the district, and it depends on the part of the city. Remember, she won. She won as a Republican. I'm sure she had plenty of Democrats who were voting for her because she knows her district really well. This is a district that includes many hardworking middle-class homeowners, property owners, people who had
Staten Island.
had to buy the $200 special composting garbage can or face a heavy fine from the city if they didn't have the right trash can. And those are the kind of issues, but she focused on the issues to her constituency, and they definitely are impacted by crime as well, property crime and that type of thing. So I think she was very smart in how she pitched her campaign and focused her interests at the very beginning. And she's letting people know, well, he's basically an unknown. So this is like, do you want to put your life and your property in the hands of somebody who has a very brief track record, if any, and you don't really know what his plans are? I mean, where are we seeing policy papers? No, we're seeing scavenger hunts.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Before I let you go, real quick, Zohran Mamdani held a scavenger hunt in New York City over the weekend, which I don't know, sounds really fun. I had a scavenger hunt birthday party when I was 13, and it was like the greatest. And I heard that they sold every ticket. It was super, super popular.
Well, they gave
He's
away
really
everything.
figured out a way to campaign differently, hasn't he?
Well, absolutely, and of course it's capitalizing on a digital trend right now, and also a programming trend, which is to gamify everything. If you want people
Right.
to do something, make it into a game, and he did
Yeah.
very successfully. Whether it'll have a long-lasting impact, we'll see.
Funny. Fun. Lisa Evers, as always, thanks so much for being here and bringing us your great reporting from on the ground in all 5 boroughs.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Up next, independent candidate for New York City Mayor Jim Walden joins us to talk about the race and his idea for the rest of the field to beat frontrunner Democrat Zohran Mamdani. Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. We'll be right back. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, where we are laser focused on this New York City mayoral election for the next 70 plus days. It's a crowded field for the New York City mayor's race, and we're happy to welcome each and every candidate. They all have an invitation to discuss their vision for the city's future. It's important to talk to the candidates, just as it's important to talk to our voters and to talk to our reporters on the ground. And so joining me now for the bigger picture is Jim Walden, an attorney who's running as an independent for New York City Mayor. Mr. Walden, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Nancy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. I want to give people an opportunity to get to know you if they've not yet heard about you and from you. So why don't you go ahead and tell our audience who you are and why you decided to run for mayor?
Sure. So I came to the city in 1993 and I had a dream to be a federal prosecutor. So I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office for 9 years. And during that time, I largely battled organized crime and international heroin traffickers. And we put away a generation of mobsters and kept a lot of heroin off the street through massive interdiction efforts. And then for 23 years, I've been a lawyer in private practice and fought for just about everyone from every walk of life. So we represented 10,000 indigent people that were thrown off the food stamps program, the entire portfolio of low-income housing communities who were facing lead in their apartments in deplorable conditions. I mean, every single case over the 23 years was intended to battle government waste, fraud, abuse, etc. And so for 23 years, I've really been fighting the exact fight that I now want to fight in City Hall. It's very clear that we need new political leadership. It's very clear that the two-party system is not working. I left the Democratic Party in 2006 because it was clear to me at that time that our parties were not working. And in New York City, we've had one bad political leader after another. The last really good mayor we had was Mayor Bloomberg. He was imperfect, but he was a lot better than the disaster that is de Blasio. And now we're in free fall with Eric Adams. And I decided it was time to get off the sidelines and actually do a version of what I've been doing for 30 years, which is fighting for people.
Well, if you had to diagnose then, especially from your own former party, if you had to diagnose why de Blasio and Eric Adams were not great mayors, what would you say?
Well, de Blasio, I think he had the promise of being somewhat centrist the way that he ran his campaign. But then once he got in, it was huge micromanagement of agencies. He really set the NYPD back so far in terms of its operations and its effectiveness. He spent millions and millions of dollars on vanity projects, $850,000 still missing from one program that was supposed to help people with mental health problems. So he, in so many ways, he was just a disaster. Eric Adams ran as a centrist, ran as a former cop who understood public safety. People believed in him. He squeaked through, remember, in the Democratic primary. He won by only 7,000 votes, but then he won against Curtis Lewa in a landslide. And then as soon as he started in City Hall, he started with this petty corruption. And what we've seen from him, from every single one in his orbit, is the kind of petty corruption that we haven't seen at this level since Tammany Hall. That's what we've really had over the course of the last 12 years. We
Hmm.
have to get back to a situation where City Hall is there to bring people together, create unity with a lot of integrity, excellence in government services, and not the sort of terrible services and terrible ethics that we've seen for so long.
So let's get into some of the issues that I know are important to you and you say important to New Yorkers. You mentioned corruption. You are going to be an anti-corruption mayor if elected. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, so we can do something that we've never done in New York City since the before Tammany Hall, and that is to have a corruption czar in the city that's completely independent of the mayor and the city council, that sits over all of the agencies and goes after corruption aggressively. So, as mayor, I would create the citywide Department of Public Integrity. The head of that agency would be appointed, not elected. That
Mm.
person would sit for 10-year terms, much like the FBI director, so that you remove and distance the person from all of the politics and the interference and the corruption. And literally, the person would have the power to investigate the mayor, him or herself, any agency within city government, the city council, and go after the corruption independently.
Don't we have existing IGs inside various government agencies? Are they not working?
Yeah, the problem is, SE, that you can't have a watchdog that reports to both the potential lead target and as the boss. So that's why
Mm.
anyone that is serious about corruption will tell you that you need someone who is independent.
And what about gerrymandering? I know people are mad about it. We're talking about it, but talk about how this impacts New York City voters.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, it's not as front burner of an issue as affordability, but with respect to gerrymandering, people don't want their vote rigged, whether they're in New York City or California or Texas, where it's happening right now. And so, as one of the many policy statements I put out, I put one out against gerrymandering to make sure that in the confines of New York City, it didn't
Mm.
happen anymore, and you can handle it by criminalizing it, because essentially it is stealing people's votes and it should be illegal. And once it's illegal, legislators will stop doing it to try to get advantage for their parties.
Well, it's an interesting idea, but explain how this works because I know the Supreme Court ruled that Congress has the right to do this. So how do you get around that?
Yeah, so that was an interpretation of a specific statute that Congress said
Mhm.
that the Supreme Court said left Congress the ability. But local elections are addressed by local laws. And if our
Mm.
local laws clarify our values, that we don't want people's votes rigged or stolen, which is
Mhm.
just common sense, then we would criminalize gerrymandering. And that would solve the problem in New York City once and for all.
Jim, I've got a lot more questions for you, so just stay right there and we'll be back right after this break with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. And we're back here on Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, one more time with independent candidate Jim Walden running for New York City Mayor. Um, I want to get back to some of the issues, Jim, because that's what voters care about. Where are you on this issue that sort of unexpectedly came up recently, decriminalizing sex work?
Oh, Essie, the truth of the matter is, I understand both sides' positions on this. I haven't formed a
Mm.
position. I'm not really sure. I want to study it more carefully. I mean, honestly, of all of the issues that New Yorkers really care about, they certainly don't want crime in their neighborhoods. They want safe subways. They want
Sure.
to know that their playgrounds and their streets are safe. But I don't know that this is such a burning issue for New Yorkers right now, and I'm going to study it more carefully before I take a position.
Fair.
How's that for a
Um,
non-political answer?
no, I mean, that's fair. In fact, I don't think we hear enough from politicians. I don't know yet. Let me take a look at that. That's actually pretty refreshing. Where are you on the rent freeze that Zohran Mamdani is talking about?
I love talking about this because the rent
Go.
freeze
Yeah.
is a solution that doesn't fix the problem. The problem
Mm.
with, and we're only talking about rent stabilized apartments, right? We're not talking about free market apartments. We're talking about
Yes.
Zohran Mamdani's idea to freeze the rent for rent stabilized apartments. The problem
Yes.
is that that doesn't solve the problem for most rent stabilized tenants. They can't afford the rent they have now. About a
Right.
250,000 of them are paying 50, 60, 70% of their incomes on rent. Can you imagine what that does to a family of four? So there's a much better program than freezing the rent. It's lowering the rent for the people who need it. The rest of the people can afford their rent. They don't need a rent freeze. But for the people that really need it, lowering the rent is a better idea. And that's why I believe that my policies and platforms are much better than his, because they solve the
Mm.
problems. They may not be great slogans, but they solve the
Hmm.
problems. And that's what really matters.
What about availability? Because that's the other problem in New York City. There's just a housing shortage. How do you address that?
Build, baby, build. It's not really that complicated, right? we
Yeah.
we have to build ambitiously. And if I wrote a housing plan that's on my website, I hope people look at it. It's more than 100 pages long. That's how many tools we have to build in the city of New
Mm.
York. We can build over 200,000 units a year. We can get way past the housing crisis to get to a housing surplus. If we just stick to plan, put politics aside, push the career politicians aside, and get the job done, we can get past the housing crisis in the city of New York.
And what about safety? It's a running thing we talk about a lot on this show as well because it's top of mind for a lot of voters. What's your plan to make walking the streets of New York City and riding the subways in New York City safer?
Well, as a former federal prosecutor, I know policing. I've worked with the police even after my time at the U.S. Attorney's Office. What we need is we need more police officers on the street. We need about 40,000 police officers. We're down to about 34,000. I'll tell you how you won't get more police officers to stay in New York City is by calling them wicked, calling them corrupt, calling to defund and dismantle them. And
Yeah.
that's what the leading Democrat has talked about for years. He had a
Yep.
4-point plan in 2021 in order to defund the police. And if you think that he doesn't want to defund the police now, wake up, New York, because that's absolutely what he's going to do. I'm going to get more cops on the street, and I'm going to do that by raising their salaries by 25% in my first term and another
Wow.
25% in my second term. I'm going to get rid of the broken system that we have for addressing police misconduct, which doesn't work for police and it doesn't work for the people it serves either. I'm
Mhm.
going to do it by better training and extending the police academy by 2 weeks so that before police have badges and guns, they actually work with leaders from disadvantaged communities. There is a better way to have a more robust and a more effective police force, and I'm going to get the job done as mayor.
Let's broaden out a bit. Your former party, the Democratic Party, it's in a tough place nationally. They're losing registered voters. They kind of can't figure out how to combat Trump. They're fighting each other on whether to pass the baton to younger Democratic leaders or whether to move to the middle or to the far left. What's your advice to the party that you used to call home?
Right. And listen, I was a lifelong Democrat. And the problem is that they just can't get the basics right. It doesn't necessarily matter whether you've got the old guard or the new guard, but you always need fresh blood, right? We've always needed term limits, and both Democrats and Republicans have been fighting them. So if we want young people to stay active in politics, of course we need younger people, but we need better policies that actually speak to working Americans and deal with regular problems. I mean, I grew up in a very working class neighborhood. I was stood in benefit lines when my father lost his job. Our steel mill got shut down. We were in the middle of gas riots in the early 1980s. It was a
Yeah.
bad economic place, and we went from a Democratic town to a Republican town. Why?
Hmm.
Because Republicans started really dealing with core issues of affordability. What made Zohran Mamdani is old line Democrats that stopped listening to the key
Mm.
issues of the economy, crime and safety, affordability, etc. But it's
Yep.
not too late. We don't have to turn to
Mm.
radical extremism in order to land the plane on what working families in New York need.
It's that's a great point. And I talk to a lot of Democrats who say, well, it's not our policies. Maybe it's just our messaging. And the policies are the hardest thing to accept, need changing. And I say that as someone who worked on the Republican autopsy in 2012. And sometimes policies aren't working, and it's hard for a party to accept that. I think those are the growing pains and the existential crisis you're seeing right now inside the Democratic Party. They want these policies to be effective, and they're not. And they're claiming that's perception that they're not effective. And I think they're kind of coming to grips with the fact that they might actually not be working. It's going to be the theme of this election, and I know it's going to be the theme of the midterms. Thanks so much for talking to us about all of your
Thank you.
positions and your hopes for the city that I know you love so much. You'll have to come back over the course of the race.
Thanks, Essie.
Thanks, Jim. And that's it for us. You can catch us tomorrow and every night of the week on Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote.